Welcome to the Work Cultured podcast, where good companies keep good company. And today we've got Malika Jacobs. She is the founder and CEO of Array out of Ohio. And we are so excited to have you, Malika. Would you mind take a moment, tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of what got you to this point in your career?
Awesome. Yeah, Daniel, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here with you. I always appreciate these moments of reflection, sort of like, how'd you get here? It's a good question.
Yeah.
Like most entrepreneurs, I will say that I never intended to be here. This is not like a predetermined path. I didn't go to college and say, oh, someday I'm gonna, have a tech startup that's doing HR ops. Like that's not even remotely what I actually studied or
Really?
I'm actually it's a long and winding path, like most people that sort of start companies. I think there's an innate curiosity about kind of the way things work and the way things are structured, and then there's probably some ego and kind of like, why does it work like that? And if I was going to do it, I'd do it like this. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm just going to do it like that. And how hard can it be to do it my way? And I'm just going to go figure that out, right? So that is kind of what happened to me. I graduated from Ohio State's business school here. I kind of caught the entrepreneurial bug academically there, but I had, done some work between college and grad with just some folks that were starting new concepts in the DC area. And that's why I went to business school, because I wanted to put some structure around teams and organizational design and how do you motivate people to get your vision executed. So
Mm.
that's why I came to business school in the first place, and then kind of unlocked entrepreneurship and sort of tech and VC as in kind of an academic sense, and got really curious about starting something on my own. So long story short, I started in the board game bar space. That
Yeah, I
is
saw that. Tell us a little
where
bit more about that.
that really came out of, I've kind of worked in restaurants and bars and coffee shops, my entire kind of like teen through 20s life on the side. And it's a very interesting place for teams to function, really. Like those environments are fascinating to me. What it takes to kind of execute, like, the busy time of a restaurant or bar, coffee shop service, and how do you keep, like, your staff is really important in that. So there's obviously a lot of turnover in the industry, and I got really curious about what it would take to kind of develop a long-standing team. I worked for restaurateurs who were amazing at that, so it was nice to sort of be, I was curious about if I could do that myself. I saw the concept of board game bar in Toronto. Um, like most entrepreneurs, I was like, how hard can this be? I'll bring it to Columbus. And it took me actually a couple years to figure out how to do that. So finally opened that up. And happy to say we had a long-standing team. That was a really big focus of mine, how to motivate people to stick around, really care about what the company is doing, really be interested in bettering the guest experience, right? Like really keep guests coming back over and over again. So we did that. We opened another location in Indianapolis, and then COVID happened.
Mm.
And like everybody else that had a business, we pivoted or tried to stay afloat and figure out how to work around the new reality. Threw a bunch of different stuff at the wall. And again, that my next move was really more out of necessity, right? Just trying to
Sure.
stay alive, trying to figure out what's happening in the world and the bigger like market, right? So ended up pivoting into a team bonding service for companies. So we played board games online with companies
Okay.
at a time when people were really craving activity and like connection. And so we had facilitators in every single session. So they were really thoughtful experiences. They were really well designed and people really got a lot out of them. And it was fascinating to see how they were implemented in companies. So as a result, I ended up working with a lot of HR leaders on how these services would work with the larger thing they were trying to accomplish for their company. And that is how I got into this world of how does HR actually work? How do they
Sure.
make decisions about which services and products and vendors they buy? How do they think about what they're trying to accomplish, their goals? Like, how do they think about how they allocate resources to get things accomplished? And 2 years later, here we are with Array. as a project management driven operations tool for HR. So
Wow.
that's the long story. That's a
No,
short
I love
story.
that. Yeah, what
But
a
it's, a winding path of just kind of, I think there's always just a curiosity about like how systems work, how people work, how can you design something that is better for people and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's always, if I have to come up with like a driving factor, that's kind of been what's motivated me.
yeah, I love that. And yeah, what a amazing pivot because I mean that could have been like, well, sorry, we're just
Yeah.
shutting down and I'm gonna go drive for Uber, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's fantastic to not
Maybe.
only pivot into the like, hey, there's this major shift that everyone's doing stuff online, so like
Yeah.
let's take what we're already doing
Yeah.
and kind of jump on that boat and then to really pivot now. And so I see on y'all's website you're listed as co-founder, CEO, and then you have another co-founder. Tell me a little bit like how did y'all know each other? How did that, part of it come about?
Yeah, yeah. Travis, I believe in my user discovery, I came across his best man from his wedding, maybe from his like
Okay.
punk rock band that he used to have.
Okay.
Uh,
Hey, Punk's not dead.
maybe it wasn't even punk. I don't even know. A band that he was in. Um, this person is now a chief people officer for a company in Montana, and I connect with a lot of people, ops people, right? I connect with a lot of HR leaders and CHROs and chief people officers to just have conversations about kind of what they're dealing with and how can we and how we can help. So I ended up talking to this person and he knew that Travis was looking for his next opportunity. And so he said, you might want to talk to this, person I talked to in Ohio. She's building something in the HR space. And um, so we connected over a year ago now, and that's how we kind of I don't think that Travis ever intended to build an HR tech company. I don't think many engineers, as far as I can tell, don't wake up in the morning and say, I really can't
Oh,
wait to solve HR
HR
tech.
tech, yes.
Just like
Yeah.
many investors don't wake up every day and say, I really can't wait to invest in HR tech. And it's like not a thing that people find, top of mind usually in these two spaces. So it took a little bit of kind of talking to Travis to say, hey, here's what we're building and here's the opportunity. But fortunate that he's brought his expertise in. So
I love it.
he's now committed.
I love that. And y'all are off and running. And
Yeah.
we're in the second full year of business now. We're coming up on the third year.
Yeah, this is it. So I was just thinking about this morning, Daniel. It takes a long time to get companies off the ground. And it was just so funny. I was thinking, man, if I ever go into like executive coaching or I help other founders, like I'm going to be like, okay, do you have 2.5 years to do nothing but spin your wheels and try to figure out where you need to go? Like that's the reality of the situation. Like it just takes a long time to gather your people, to get the right people in the right seats, to figure out who this is for, like what are you selling? Like you can have an idea, but to actually get it into the hands of people that are going to buy it and pay for it and use it, that's a long journey. And
Yeah.
we're still on that journey. So we are super early. We have an MVP. We have a few users and design partners, but we still haven't hit the market in a broad way. Like we don't have that, the product is not ready for mass sort of usage yet. So that should happen this year. We're on our way, but it's a long process to get to
Yeah.
that point where you have something that people can really utilize on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
And I love hearing, I mean, just like we talked about it, and I'm gonna hit you with that first question here in a moment, but yeah, there's something about that vulnerability of like it's not easy
No.
and it is a daunting task, but I'm not only excited to stay connected and kind of see where the journey
Yeah.
takes y'all, but I love that energy of like, man, I want to get to the point where I can help others understand what this journey looks like and
Yeah.
the challenges that they'll be facing.
I know, because I do think that starting your own company, being CEO, entrepreneurship looks really sexy from the outside, right? Being your own boss, setting your own
Yep.
schedule, but there's like a lot of just very peculiar types of like ways that you have to be with your own
Yeah.
insecurities and your own like self-doubt in
Yeah.
order to really get through some very hard parts of that, right? So
Yeah.
um I just think it's not for everyone, right? And it
No, not
and
at all.
and, it, and every time that you see a success, that's like usually blood, sweat, and tears of a number of years before you have an overnight success, right? Which I think
Yeah.
you can spin that story any way you want once you're kind of looking back on it. But the reality is that it's usually, what do they say, like three failures to get to one success or something? Like you have to learn kind of by failing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that being said,
Mm.
my favorite question,
Mm.
the question we start every podcast with is what is a mistake in leadership that you've made that you'll never forget?
um, there are many. However, I will put a plug in for HR and say that when you are in the early days of running a company, you are everything, right? So you are HR, you are the legal team, you are the marketing team, you're every part of that. And so when we were in the height of COVID, I mean, if you remember, like the holiday season around 2020 was sort of a wild time. Um, we had pivoted the business. I had long-standing managers who had worked for years for me in my previous business. And I probably didn't really understand how much of an emotional toll the pace of change and the pivot was taking on
Mm.
people who had especially been used to one way of working, or they had signed up for a board game bar, and
Yeah.
now we were a virtual team bonding company. So I probably kind of missed a little bit of giving weight to that sort of transition time. Like I think I
Sure.
was in survival mode and I was like, we just got to go and there's no time to question what we're doing and we got to sell these holiday events and it's happening right now. And so there was a lot
Mm.
of probably pent up sort of, just there wasn't a lot of room for people to share kind of their own kind of emotional state around that. And then just the macro world being so uncertain at that time. And then you layer in any like personal kind of stuff that people are individually going through. It just all came to a head for us in early January of the next year, where we had a serious kind of mental health incident with a member of the team. And I felt really um, out of my like I didn't know how to handle that, right? I've not been trained in human
Mm.
resources. I really didn't understand the legality of what I was supposed to do. I didn't have anyone to advise me, right? So I felt really out of my element and how to handle that moment in time and how to be kind and human to the person I was employing, and also how to protect the business and the other people that worked for me and our clients, and the fact that we had to do more team bondings for people, right? And we couldn't
Yeah.
just stop and kind of like deal with this thing fully. So um I ended up, at the end of the day, I ended up hiring an external HR company to come in and advise us through that time because I really felt out of my element in that. But
Mm.
I always think about that, and I think about how, now as we're growing our next team, I really, to have somebody who can absorb and advise on some of those more people related, really tricky situations that come up as we're all human,
Yeah.
is can be really helpful for business. And especially when things are so, because usually when people are working at a small company, it's they're really emotionally invested in that work, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
it becomes more than just doing a job or getting a paycheck. Like they're really, usually there's a lot of camaraderie with the other people who are working, so those relationships are much more emotional and can be more fraught at the end of the day. And you're really passionate about what you're doing, so it can feel more than just a job. And so
Yeah.
I think that heightened sense of human relationships and dynamics necessitates sometimes outside counseling on how to manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And like that is I feel like from someone that has been on the employee end of that early in
Yes.
my career,
Yeah.
That's a tough situation to be in.
Yes.
Um, I
Absolutely.
I vividly remember going through my divorce,
Yeah.
12, 13 years ago, and going into my boss's office. He's still friends of mine today. We were
Yes.
texting earlier,
Yes.
and he didn't know what to do, but he just said he closed the curtains and he said, "All I know is that right now you need a big brother hug."
That's exactly
And my
right.
boss just like gave me a hug, and I just like
Yeah.
stood there bawling my eyes out. He didn't know what else to do, but just knew that I needed that. So
No,
at
that's
least,
exactly right. Like, how do you handle those moments that are so, like, people are going through their own
yeah,
things, right? And you have a business to run and you have the larger entity to protect, and you're also trying to take care of the people
yeah,
who are showing up and needing support, right? So,
yeah. No, good for you.
yeah,
I know
it's a
that
hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing for HR leaders to manage
I was
today.
about to say, I know that is a hard thing to manage, but
It
wow.
is hard. Yeah. It's hard
Yeah,
for people that whose job that is. Like that is the role of that is like what HR does day in and day out is sort of like how do we keep this business afloat and protect the interests of the company and still be human and take care of people,
yeah.
right? And sometimes those are in contrast or, contradiction to each other and that doesn't always it's not always they're not always going
And
to
it,
get it
it
right.
shouldn't it shouldn't be like that. Like
Correct.
it should not be this. I
Correct.
feel like it should be more,
Correct.
like, hey, we're working in this thing together because
Yes.
if we have happy, healthy employees, then they're
Yes.
going to do their best work and they're going to be excited
Yes.
to do that. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Absolutely. But that's that takes a lot of thoughtful leadership to
sure. Yeah.
to put that into effect too, right? So, yeah.
So as here we are, we're with Array and we're kind of in the
Mhm.
early stages. I mean, have y'all put much thought into as we're building this thing and the culture that we want to have? Like, have y'all put much thought into how you're going to create that as you grow, especially with 2025 being a big year for y'all
Yeah, yeah.
upcoming?
It's so interesting because it is like I feel even more on the hook to do this right this time because we
Hmm.
are an HR tech
Yeah,
company. It's like when we were, a team bonding company, it was like, oh, is my team like meshing? Like, can we play games together and like really have a great session? That was like, that felt like we had to get that right. This feels like we really have to get our culture right. Like, who are the, how are we handling people? How do we think about that? So it does feel like we're on the hook for a bit more, scrutiny in that regard if we do get
sure.
it wrong, right? Whatever that um, would mean. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of debate still right now around work environments, right? Are we expecting people to report to work? Are we expecting people to have their own say in how they want to manage their work life and where they work and if they're working from home or remotely or whatever that is? We have been a remote company from the beginning. I've never met in person many of the people that we work with
Oh,
every
wow.
day.
Okay.
And I strongly believe that that allows people to kind of utilize their time to their personal relationships and their families in the way that is best for them, right? So, um, that's something that will continue always, I think, is to be a remote company. Like I don't ever see us kind of hunkering down in an office.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds like it could be nice sometimes too. I don't know. But I don't, that's not like something that is central to who we are, right? Is to be in person, even though I think it is something that a lot of companies are still actively debating if they are an
Yeah.
in-person or remote or hybrid work environment. Um, I think this is sort of just from our startup, like just the fact that I've worked in small companies with small teams. I work with a lot of self-starters, right? Folks that sort of know like how to show up and define their own output. And that is a skill that I now know. Like I wouldn't have been able to say that a few years ago when I first started, but that's a skill I look for in people. Like, can they show up and they are telling me what they're doing? That's actually
Yeah.
the best. Like we just
Yeah.
we need that, right? Because I can't so much of what we're doing is uncertain and unknown. We're creating it. So, like looking to me to have an idea of what we do next, that's actually not, I couldn't even do it if I wanted to. So I always say that my biggest talent and my biggest job is to bring really smart people to the table who are experts at what they do and give them the leeway and the capacity to kind of define what that is and to tell me and to push back on me when I have ideas, right? So um I think that will always be something that drives our culture is just I just really independently motivated people who aren't afraid to speak their minds.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that's something that I hope we can continue as we grow. I do think it gets harder in bigger companies. Um, and I've never managed a huge company where I don't know if I would still, I don't know if I want like 500 people pushing back on me. Let's see how I do then. But
yeah.
but I think it's important to have people around you, especially in leadership positions, who question why and how you're doing something.
Well, especially, yeah. I mean, I've worked in organizations before where they didn't like that, and I'm like,
I
I
know.
don't don't you agree that you hired these certain people
Totally.
for a reason because
Totally.
you felt like they were talented
Yeah,
and smart and capable people, but now that they're bringing you brilliant ideas
totally.
that just because they're different than your ideas, you're shooting them down, and
I know.
it's ridiculous. So
It
I
is
love that
shocking.
you understand it.
Yeah, and I again, like I don't know if that is just uh a product of the environments that I've been in that we've been fortunate that I haven't really had to move on that like line of how I like to think about leadership and managing people, but even in small company, I was just speaking with one of my former employees and they were telling me that they're now working for another small company founder, another founder, just very under 10, 15 person company. And the founder is, and they are worried that the founder is resistant to their pushback, their feedback. And so I don't know that's necessarily a product of size, right? I just think sometimes people get really worried or there's fear that comes in around not having the answers. And I feel like I've always just been like, I don't have the answers. And I actually
Yeah,
I brought you on because I hope you have answers.
yeah,
I don't actually know what we're like. I don't know what this thing looks like, but if we kind of put all the ideas together and take like I'm good at sort of saying like, okay, how do we resource plan around that? What can we actually do today? What can we do tomorrow? Like it's not all going to happen at once, but I definitely want to hear the ideas and I definitely want to hear when people are pushing back on something. Because that's the other thing. It's like, wouldn't you rather hear it from your employees than your customers?
yeah,
Like somebody's going to tell you that's a terrible idea. You're going to feel it on the customer side. You're going to feel it on the revenue side. Like your idea is going to be tested, right?
yeah,
And wouldn't you rather have somebody internally telling you, it's not a great idea than to kind of have those cracks show like in the market, you know?
yeah. And for so long there's been this kind of theme of, well, we hire for culture fit.
Yes.
Well, and we're starting to see finally this shift in, no, we need to hire for culture fill
Yeah.
because we have these gaps or cracks
Right.
in our org where we need to find the people that can fill those,
Interesting.
that are going to balance us out,
Hmm.
instead of just a bunch of the same
The
people that are
same.
all doing the same things. And it seems
Yeah.
like a
Group
recipe for
think
failure that way.
kind of, yeah. That's actually real. I hadn't heard of that term, and I really love that. I love
Well,
that.
quote me on that if you ever. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I know, I know. That's how I feel about, there's so much talk of efficiency these days. But I heard somebody saying it's actually like effectiveness, right? Like, what's the
Mm,
point of efficiency if you're not getting the thing done that you
yeah,
like committed to getting done? And I'm like, oh yeah. So I've really been. It's like a slight change in the word fit, fill,
yeah.
efficiency, effectiveness. It feels like it seems similar, but they're really vastly different concepts if you think about them, what they
Sounds
fundamentally.
like the framework for a
Yeah.
TED Talk coming up. I'm gonna give you
We can
four
knock it out
points:
together
fit,
like a duel.
fill,
We need one more. You got to go in threes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have at least three.
Yeah. Yeah. Test it out this week at South by and see how that lands.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna be doing a lot of. Well, nowadays I'm like, hey, let's go for the fist bump. I don't know where you're,
Yeah.
you know. where your hands have been.
Yeah,
But
exactly,
here,
exactly.
let me give you some hand sanitizer and then we'll shake hands. But so as y'all think, I mean, as we record this, it is March 5th,
Hmm.
2025, which one is bonkers. It seemed like it was January 2 days ago.
Correct. I know.
But you mentioned, hey, we feel like 2025, this is our year. I mean, go into as much detail as you feel open to share, but I mean, what are the things that excite you the most about the rest of this year and maybe what are some of the biggest goals that y'all have as a
Yeah.
company?
Yeah. It's there are a lot, but I'll just focus on one because I think it's a big topic and it's sort of a squishy one still.
Okay.
There and it kind of goes back to this question of efficiency or effectiveness, right? So um we were kind of at the one stage of AI kind of heading into the end of last year, right? And then we kind of there's some product releases around these agentic AI tools, and there was like a shift in people's thought processes around what AI could really do, right? Be more than just responsive. They could sort of be autonomous and more intelligent, right? And kind of execute on the work these agents themselves. Um, and it's really shifted how I think we think about our product and the value of our product and the value of our product for HR leaders who we ultimately serve, right? The
Sure.
tool is made for HR operations leaders, the folks that are sitting there managing the work of the HR function, and how does that align with what the business is trying to carry out? And so there's just so much opportunity now in that slight shift, sort of from so if you think about the previous kind of thought processes around HR, it was sort of really in line with like HR tech as it was sort of like as it has been over the past like 5, 10 years, which is like, how do we just make this more efficient and how do we like automate this thing? So if you have like, you post a job and there's like 2,000 job applications, how can we make that more efficient to both the applicant and the person who is receiving these resumes on the company side? And there's a lot that AI can do for both parties to make that process less of a headache, right?
Sure.
And then it's just in like automation, right? Like, how do we just get rid of the stuff that nobody wants to do, like entering your name in 5 different ways or uploading your
Oh
resume,
my God.
like 30 different companies, like different templates, right? So those things are kind of a no-brainer for AI, right? But that's not really what our tool, like we weren't automating this sort of like routine process. So now with the conversation around agentic AI, that is actually really in line with kind of how we were thinking about our tool being effective for HR, which is that there are certain workflows and processes and standard operating procedures that can be made more efficient. And how do we kind of get rid of the routine sort of project management work that HR is constantly in, and deciding how to prioritize work and think about what to do next and where to put resources next and how to change course, right? How to make different decisions, especially when the company changes course or
Hmm.
macro environment, sort of like in a crisis like COVID, right? Dictates that you have to change course. How can we set up a framework of thinking through those decisions for HR leaders, to be adaptable, to be creative, to be proactive and not
Yeah.
just responsive, right? So um, that is that's a kind of work flow and set of work skills that this new sort of genre of AI that we're just beginning to understand can really be helpful for. So I just feel like our product is really hitting at a time where we're going to be able to build and learn with this new technology that's in the market. Um, and that's really exciting. Like I'm really excited,
Yeah.
right? So
Right on the kind of the verge of
yeah, feels like
big
this.
things all around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like our product is sort of coming into fruition right at the time that this is all kind of emerging, and we're in a prime position to really to grow with this technology and really implement it in a very cool way for HR, where it can really augment and boost up the work that is already happening and just clear
Yeah.
some of the headspace and some of the room for some more of that strategic business decision making.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
That's the big thing that we're really excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for y'all then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like
So,
the we're just hitting that conversation at the right time.
yeah. Do
Yeah.
y'all have like specific goals in terms of, kind of customer size or maybe even I don't want to say monetary goals, but I mean, and in those terms, or is it more focused on as we create the product, we know that these other things will fall in line?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I do think we are really thinking about the next generation of HR. What does HR look like for, my kids are like, you know, 7 and 8, right? They are what work looks like and what an HR department looks like will be, I mean, they what we think of and what we grew up with will be nothing, it will not
Yeah.
even remotely like they will have no concept of that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we really feel like we are a part of that moment of rewriting what this entire function looks like in business. Like it's at a point where it will change dramatically. Um, some people are saying it will cease to exist. I think that is not, we are of the mindset that it's a critical part of business. So
Yeah.
it should evolve like any business function, right? And it will change, but it certainly isn't going to go away, or it's not like, AI bots are going to do HR and we'll never need
Yeah.
HR people again, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think if we thought that, we'd be designing a different type of product. But so I think we're at a point where, but the conversation around what HR looks like for our kids as they go to work is like it is being written as we speak. The post-COVID fallout is really real for this
Yeah.
function, and also for the relationship and the dynamic between employees and employers that was really rewritten during COVID. We're still figuring out a lot of the messiness around it, right? Even in terms of who shows up for work, who is responsible for health and well-being and benefits, and your personal life outside of work, like how much does the company sort of manage and take care of that, right? I think crises are just becoming more commonplace, whether they're weather events or geopolitical crises, as teams are global, and
Yeah.
they're really like there are a lot of reasons that people can't show up to work on any given day, right? Maybe there's power outages, there's floods, there's hurricanes, there's fires, right? There's wars. You saw that with, tons of Ukrainian developers that companies had employed, right? So these are real, like all of that rapid change is hitting up against rapid tech innovation,
Yeah.
hitting up against a function that's responsible for people management, right? In a world that is increasingly more isolated, even as we're connected, more lonely, even as we're like in. So there's real things that people are showing up with at work that I think that HR is just going to have to be in a better position to manage and think about how they adapt and think of the frameworks that allow them to make the smartest decisions with sometimes very limited information. So that is what we're working on, is how do we look at that decision making, right?
Yeah.
For this function of business, how do we coach and guide and like think about the frameworks that you can have, that you can apply given what your business wants to accomplish? How can you make the best decisions around where to allocate resources to take care of your employees, right?
Yeah. And
That's
it sounds a little bit like, if you remember, well, we've established we're about the same age, so you have to
yeah,
remember when we were younger. Haven't seen it lately, but like there's like this little old lady, and she's got all these different sticks and the plates spinning,
yes,
and
yes,
she's like,
yes, yes,
doing all the
yeah,
plate spinning. That's what it sounds like as you describe that. Is
totally.
like you're the lady that's spinning all these plates, and you gotta balance all these different things, and And then everyone's watching you the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, how do you think about which plate you're going to let drop and
Yeah.
which one you're going to like what is the formula, what are the algorithms, what are the patterns, right, that you've seen that we've seen work in the past that we can apply to your situation, so how can we
Yeah.
give you more informed decision making, right, scenario planning, kind of risk assessment. So those are the kinds of things that that's really what's exciting about the data, and kind of what's like if you have a pool of data that you can work with and kind of start to you know pull patterns from, um it can be really relevant to future decision making, right? So
Yeah.
that's like really exciting stuff that we didn't have before, when all this data was kind of living in people's spreadsheets that they
Yeah.
kind of have on a drive somewhere, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of what gets really exciting, is being able to sort of help with that decision making.
Yeah. And being on really truly being on the forefront of it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it sounds like you are really like leading the way in some things and I I mean I don't know what I'm talking about, but it sounds like, I mean, y'all, this could really be a breakthrough year for y'all, and I'm excited,
Thank
like
you.
really truly to, especially, a lot of what we do on the side is in the HR space,
Yeah.
so
And you know the
def
space, and
definitely excited to see where things take y'all.
yeah, thank you. And I love
Yeah,
talking to people that have some sort of respect for HR, right? I talk to a lot of
yeah,
people that are sort of like, can disregard the function or question the
we don't need those people.
that's how I feel as well. And so I really try to I love talking to people who take seriously the work that's being done in
Yeah,
that function, and really are curious about how to make it better, because it helps all of us, right? We all show up to work. We all have our personal lives and our personal cares, and we're trying to take
yeah,
care of our families and our communities and ourselves, right? So having that advocate at work and having that framework for the people that are trying to do that is really helpful.
yeah, and I feel like it's very vital. So.
Yeah.
Thanks for, yeah, doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. That's exciting stuff.
Thanks. Thanks.
So
Yeah.
as we kind of start to wrap up
Mhm.
here, are there any kind of final, maybe words of wisdom, nuggets that you'd like to share?
Um, let's see. I think everyone is in, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I sense that people are in a heightened sort of state of anxiety, kind of, as there's a lot
Hmm.
of uncertainty in the world right now, right?
Yep.
You can look at it locally, you can look at it kind of in our country, you can look at it on the global, space, you could look at it more macro in terms of what is happening with climate crisis and just bigger existential sort of like issues for humanity as a whole. So there's a lot of layers of anxiety right now. So
Yeah.
um, I think that just encouraging people to have sort of give people the benefit of the doubt, right? I think
Yeah.
people are dealing with a lot of that anxiety. It comes out in odd ways. And I think sometimes people don't, assuming bad intent can just make the situation even worse, right? So just kind of assuming that people are doing the best with what they can in the moment and the capacity that they have to handle kind of the big signals or kind of things that all that uncertainty is causing in people's brains, right? So
Yeah.
just I think kindness and helping out individually, people one on one, I think will go a long way for everyone this year.
Yeah.
Just, I think sometimes people really want like big impact, right? But sometimes you can make really small gestures just day to take care of people and make sure you're just kind of looking out for people. And even if it's just like letting someone go at a stop sign, right? Like you're probably
Yeah.
gonna end up at the next stoplight looking at them anyways. So
Right.
cutting them off is not like a helpful tactic, right? So just kind of like easing up, and I think everyone's kind of in a heightened state right now trying to figure it all out. So this will be a year that I think tests a lot of people's mental health and wellness, and so
Yeah.
taking care of each other.
Yeah. I don't know where we got it from, but Jason and I have been using that term positive assumption
Yeah,
for a
great.
number of years.
Perfect.
And it
That's right.
started with if someone calls in sick,
Yes.
instead of as soon as they hang up the phone or as soon as they see that email, go, yeah, they're lying. That's
It's
not real. They're making
totally.
what? Like, why do we have that energy?
I know.
Instead, being able to trust them and take that positive assumption and, wow, hey, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Let me know how I can help. I hope everything is okay, and
totally.
keep me posted, okay? Like, take care of yourself today. The
Totally.
work will be here.
Yeah.
That's so simple. And then on the end of the employee,
Yeah.
what a much better feeling to
I
feel
know.
like, wow, this person that I give the vast majority of my waking hours to actually care about
Is
me.
assuming the best, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's like if someone is lying about that, like that's even more like that stinks too. Like wouldn't you want
Yeah,
to
that's
report
on
that?
them. Like
Yeah, like and if you feel like you have to lie about that, that's like even worse, right? So there's like
all
it's
the
just I
layers.
love the positive assumption thing. I think it's so and it makes it's like just let it roll off your back, right? Because then you're consuming that energy of just kind of
Yeah.
assuming the worst and being kind of angry and peeved about everything. And it's like it's this idea that people are kind of out to get you when really it's like you're not the center of, that person's not even like they're trying to take care of themselves and their family and like
Yeah.
get
And no,
day.
trust me, I've worked for people like that,
Yeah.
and I'm a like tell it like it is kind of a
Yeah.
guy. And I
Yeah.
remember one time telling the boss, I was like, "Hey, I don't know how else to say it, but we actually don't care that much about you. Like, I don't really.
I don't sit here thinking about
I'm
this.
like, I'm legitimately telling you what is happening in my life,
Yeah.
and your first response is to think that I'm lying to you?
Yeah.
I
Because
don't
it
even have the
impacts
energy
how
to
it
make
impacts
that up. I'm
you.
just I'm just communicating with you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, you're such so low in the totem
Yeah.
pole of the things that I'm worried about. But
Totally.
now with that kind of response, it makes me question, what am I even doing working for you?
Working.
You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I love positive assumption. I think that's like it'll serve all of us well to kind of just like take it all
Absolutely.
down a notch.
Yeah.
Like, things are wild out there,
It's
so
hard enough.
it's hard enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
Malika, what a breath of fresh air. I've really enjoyed getting to have you.
Daniel? Yeah.
Now, I always say this, and I probably should not say that this is my favorite part at the end, but it is one of them.
Okay, what's gonna happen now?
And now there's a little guy that's gonna slap a pie in your face. No, that'd be cool technology, like, but so we're gonna do a quick this or that,
Okay.
and I will be honest and say early on, every single episode I tried to like
Mm,
curate one, but then I was like, no, I like my standards,
mm.
and these are what I stick with because I
Great.
don't know, I like it.
Great. Great.
These are my favorite ones, and you can say pick one or the other,
Okay.
or tell me a different one that's not even one of those options.
Okay. Cool.
Um, so don't overthink it. The
Okay.
first one, you can see my get up here.
Yeah.
Golf or tennis?
Oh, tennis.
Tennis. All right. You a good tennis player?
No, I've never played tennis in my life.
Okay,
I
okay.
do have my daughters in because I have, put your
Love
hopes
it.
on your kids, right? So,
Yes, I love it. I love
I
it.
took a quarter credit PE course my senior year of college in tennis, and I was like, whoa, this is way harder than I thought. I was like, I can
Yeah.
pick up anything, I could do it. Like, I'm pretty
Yeah,
athletic, and nope. So,
I love it. All right, all right. Next one, tea or coffee?
oh, coffee, even though we are Sri Lankan, we were colonized by the British, produce a lot of tea.
Sure.
My parents drink tea, coffee.
Coffee. How do you take your coffee?
With cream. I
Okay,
love just a straight up drip coffee. I'm not a fancy
okay.
coffee
All
drinker.
right.
I don't love all the things.
Yeah.
How
Well,
about you?
it's funny.
You drinking a cup
Every
of coffee?
Sunday, I try
Yeah.
one day a week, I'll go and get a fancy
Oh
coffee,
yeah.
which, not to brag, but they built a Dutch Brothers. Do y'all have Dutch Brothers?
No.
Dutch Brothers to me is like
I'm trying to think what
Starbucks
that
on
is.
steroids.
Is
It's
it?
like
Okay.
bougie coffee.
Okay, okay.
And they, instead of calling them baristas
Uh,
because it's Dutch bros, they call them broistas.
that's really funny.
But they're like, you pull up to the window and they're like genuinely nice people. Like I
Great.
went last Sunday and they're like, "Hey, what are you up to? How's your Sunday going? Like, what you got going on today? You know, like,
It's amazing.
yeah, you feel like, hey, it's my bro,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Good. Brand accomplished.
I know, I love it. They're killing it.
Great.
So, mountains or beaches?
Oh, beaches.
Beaches.
Yeah,
I
I was
love
just
it.
dreaming of the beach today. It's like March
Oh,
in Ohio. We haven't seen sun for
I know, right?
I don't know how many straight weeks.
We gotta send some sun up y'all's way.
Yeah, yeah.
So this next one, I'm gonna just ask, whiskey or beer, or something completely different, or none of the above.
Uh, no, beer.
Yeah,
Beer. Yeah. I mean, beer. I'd love to be a whiskey drinker.
yeah.
Just not that
I
cool.
told. I mean, I'm sober these days, but
Yeah.
in a perfect world, I'll do a shot of Jameson and then
Yeah.
just nurse a beer the
Yeah.
rest of the night.
Yeah. See, I'd love to be a person that could like, just drink a straight up whatever that is. But I just, yeah, beer is more
Yeah,
my
I
thing.
love it. Last one, my favorite one. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Interesting. I'm definitely not a night owl and I never will be. But
Okay.
unfortunately, I have always thought of myself as a morning person, but then I had children and I am exhausted and
Yeah.
it is more and more challenging for me to get up in the mornings. However, I do force myself to the
Yeah.
gym a few days a week pretty early before everyone wakes up
Oh,
and
good for you.
it is great. So,
Yeah,
a morning person.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Malika, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, Danielle. Thank you.
And we're going to sign off for now with
Sure.
the Work Cultured podcast. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks.